Hey guys, Ascend here. Last week I posted one of my runs for feedback, and I'm happy to say I received tons of helpful points. I thought with this week being somewhat of a tough one, I'd try working on the suggestions I got, and I wanted to do that by revisiting another halls to see how I'm doing. This time around I thought I'd treat it more of a review to go over what I'm doing in hopes of helping you guys, and also doing another pass over my thinking throughout the run to see if there's anything to improve. If you find any of this helpful, feel free to let me know down in the comments. The last video did pretty well in terms of views, so depending on the level of interest, and if I think this is helpful to people, I might be interested in making this more of a regular thing. As usual, the links for my Twitch to watch me live and the logs are down in the description below, so with all that out of the way, let's get into it. Alright, as we get ready to stick in the key here, you'll notice that we popped Incarn and also potted right before the key went in. So this stuff is off CD now, we can use it again, but we have the benefit of the potion here, and also we have 30-second Incarn. That's going to be nice for just helping assemble this pack and build up a little bit of an absorb before we get into it. Also, since this week is Raging Fortified Explosive, Explosive is going to be a pretty big deal on these bigger pulls, but since we're popping our Incarn and our Boomy's popping Frenzy, we're pretty much just sitting here spamming Thrash, and in fact you can see here, oh whoops, you can see right here this 53k is tracking my current level absorb. Just watch that number as this pull progresses, because it's going to be fluctuating quite a bit, and you can imagine if we lose a Thrash global, we might be in a little bit of danger as we're taking quite a bit of damage from this pull here, and we just want to be farming as much damage as possible. So as we keep going on, we're letting the rest of our group handle most of the explosives that aren't really going big on their CDs, so we can just continue to be safe here and not drop too low. Also, you'll notice this tracker here for my Iron Fur. I tend to be maintaining like 10 plus stacks. It's a bit of a habit that I've gotten into as a new bear player rather. But depending on levels of agility, actually stacks above 8 to 10 aren't really giving any benefit because you're already at the armor cap at that point. So a better strategy is holding on to more of your rage for the end of your Incarn so that you're able to kind of prolong the benefit of your Incarn having that banked rage, so you get a longer period of more Iron Fur stacks. So definitely in this pull I could have been much more efficient with these charges and banked a lot of this rage because we really don't need to be maintaining this many stacks. It's just gratuitous at this point, and would be best served afterwards. As we get into raging territory here, this stuff is starting to do a lot more damage. Even though we have you Incarn, our health is actually starting to move a bit now, but because we're maintaining lots of stacks of fur, we're still able to kite. But you see now, once we're down to only a couple stacks, I call for trees just to finish off the last couple mobs and avoid any accidents of getting one shot. Looking at the rest of the defensive usage here, like I'm sitting on Bark and both of my stacks of Frenzied Regen. Definitely we could have been a bit more proactive using these. But we managed to make it through safely, so it was fine. And we just do a cheeky Owl Convoke here to get a bit of damage and help us get to the next pull a bit faster. Kind of planning what we're doing ahead here, you'll see if you look at the side, I have everyone's CDs tracked. And while we do have meta, we don't really have... This Veins is about to expire on the Mage, and we also don't have Incarn. So we're going to want to do a bit of a break pull just as we get our CDs back before we do anything else big. So we're just going to do this 5-pack here. And for that, you know, we have tons of tools at our disposal. This is why we saved Trinket in the last pull and a stack of Survival Instincts. So we just do a bit of a recovery pull here. As soon as we go in, of course, we're using the Bark just to bridge that gap between not having that many Iron Fur stacks. And one of the points of feedback I got from the last video was that in AoE situations, I'm definitely relying on Swipe too much when it's actually much more efficient to be using Moonfire in those pulls where situations where you have Thrash and Mangle both on CD. And the target's going to be living more than about 12 seconds. So definitely I'm doing a little bit of it here. You can see the Moonfire is being kept up somewhat on 1-2 targets, but still an area, just a bit of a habit that I need to break of over-relying on Swipe. And as this is raging, once these Gargans hit 30%, we're going to want to do a little bit of kiting here just to reduce the amount of damage we're taking. We still have both of our frenzied regen charges here that we can use that we really shouldn't be sitting on, but we also don't really want to face tank these because they're going to mess us up pretty badly. Now, coming into this next pull, you see our cooldowns are in much better shape. We're 23 seconds on our Incarn and 15 seconds on Frenzy, so we're going to be able to blast here. So it's good ahead of time. I like marking things so DPS are able to look at it and see what needs to happen for this next pull. So I mark and call early that Star is going to need a kick rotation to get into melee here. As we just kind of go and group everything up here. Then this at least gets everyone's CDs down and gets fairly good value. I think on non-raging weeks, it's a good idea to be pulling the two casters just ahead of us, closer to the shard into this as well. But given that it's raging and those wicked bolts can be extremely scary for us, I decided to be a bit more conservative. Especially when we're running a comp that's a little on the kick light side. And as you see here, we're holding on to trees for when everything is low so we can get a safe convoke in. Since we don't want to be tanking this stuff anyway, it will definitely ruin our day. Now, this next pull, as you can probably imagine, is going to be a bit scary for us. We do have all of our charges of SI, we have our Trinket, we have Bark. But looking at our DPS CDs, all we really have is the Mage going to be lasting here. So this is definitely going to be a little bit scary when stuff starts to get into raging territory. And for that, we're just holding on to as much of the group CC as we can so that we're able to minimize the number of Wiki B casts. And as you can kind of see with how I'm using my charges of defensives here, I'm waiting for sets where we're letting both of the Wicked Bolts go through just to make sure I don't get surprise globaled by any of the missed kicks here. And we have Beam here for when the Obliterators are getting into raging territory. And then here I believe we're going to be roaring momentarily. Oh no, we get the Cocoon instead. Definitely would have been a good opportunity for us to use our incapacitating roar here. That was a bit of a misplay there. Good that the healer was able to cover though. And so now that we've got a lot of the scary damage out of the way, we're just going to pull in these Groundskeepers into this pull, just for some extra cleave damage. A little early here, but we also get trees to help out a little, which it would be good to hold a little bit longer, but it at least gives us the opportunity to pool our rage, so as soon as we're back in here, we're able to instantly go up to quite a few stacks of fur in preparation for everything to start raging. And just to minimize the amount of healing that we need to receive here, we probably could face tank these dredgers, but we can keep everything you know, fairly stacked up and close together without having to take all this unnecessary damage. So we just do a little bit of backpedaling while still making sure we're in range to do damage. For Executioner here, this actually is a very good opportunity for us to get a Owl Convoke in. You see, once Executioner does this Sever on us, the bleed, he does 2 or 3 autos, and then there's a pretty long period of where he does this Group Fear and then the Carnage, where usually I like to get a full Convoke in, get your Star Surge out, and depending on how far the DPS runs away, you can also get in a Sunfire. So it's a really, really good opportunity to get some single target dam in here and just help get through this pull that much faster. And you see I'm just going to keep shifting in and out every time he does this to farm some free damage. Just to get out of here a little bit quicker. This guy can be somewhat scary for us, especially when all we're sitting on here is Bark and Frenzied Regen. The latter of which isn't going to help us a whole lot because of the healing reduction. So we want to get out of here as quickly as possible. And now we're already starting to think about the next pull that we're going to be doing, or at least I am. Just looking at everyone's CD situations here, I have Incarn, we have Meta, we have Frenzy, we have Veins, we have literally all the tools that we need to do something big, so we're going to try to make sure we make use of it. So we're going to come down here and put together a pretty sizable pull. As we get down into this area, there's more Dark Blades and Cleaves, things that will generally ruin our DH's day. So as the tank, it's really important to always make sure when there's things like that in the pack that can kill the rest of your group, you're being really mindful of your positioning. So like here, I go immediately to top-down camera to make sure that I have all of the cleaves pointed in the same direction where they're not going, where they're predictable and people can dodge them, and also that there's no mobs behind me that are going to melee. It sounds like a simple thing, but in these bigger pools, it's really easy for the mobs to sometimes just randomly pathfind and make their way around and start hitting you in the back. So here I'm just making sure that the only mob that's ever behind me in this pool is the Houndmaster, which doesn't matter because all it's going to do is shoot and you can't dodge that anyway. And there's no Gargans, for example, behind me that are going to bite me in the ass and magically global me. Because that definitely is a thing that, if you're not attentive, can happen quite easily. And it's never a fun way to die and have to explain to your group. So this pull is similarly a bit scary like the previous shard pull. Like, we don't have that many CDs rolling into it. We once again have the mage using theirs. We don't have Incarn. We do thankfully have meta though, which should make this a little bit cleaner. Although we are still going to want to be really attentive about those obliterators and their wiki bees and make sure that if both of them are going to go through, we have something like you just saw there. I would have died if not for the survival instincts there. Wicked Bolts can be incredibly scary, especially when you don't have the kicks and CC to handle all of them. So here I drop quite low as they get into Raging territory and right before we get the soothe on them, but now we're pretty much in the clear now that one of them's been soothed, they're both about to die, and we have tons of stops for these last casts. And again, good opportunity now that there's not too much going on in the pack. We can kind of take stock of where everyone's CDs are at. I think a really important factor for tanking in hierarchies is just always being attentive to what your group is able to do and what they can't do, and just being on top of everyone's CDs to make sure they get good uses in. So I'm looking up and seeing that mine and the Boomy's CDs are synced up as they should be. We both have about 30 seconds left on ours, and Mage is going to have Icy Veins for the next pull that we do. So we can definitely be pretty aggressive with this. We're going to have the survivability and the damage to back it up. So we're going to be skipping Sagadon here, but a pull that I don't know if this is going to be the move going forward, but just something I've kind of been messing around with, is this middle pull in the middle of the room. If you get kicks on the Obliterator that you're going to see us doing momentarily, you can actually just drag it into the corner here, and it's pretty good overall cleave damage. So we're going to be getting a Poly on the Houndmaster, and then in comes the Obliterator. One of these days, there we go. And we'll just kick him all the way into the corner. Once again, this is a pull where, unfortunately, Eddie is probably just going to do nothing but whack-a-mole with explosives because we're incarning and we don't really want to waste the globals on potentially dying for it. But the rest of our group is just going to absolutely melt this pack and should be fairly efficient. And again, we're just super vigilant of the fact that there are 3 deadly thrusts in this pack, so we have to be really careful about where we're pointing the pack. We don't want to be accidentally spinning stuff around and killing people. So I'm going to be calling that I'm going to be kiting quite soon. There's the trees. The group knows that when trees is out, they have to be mindful of cleaves because they can point any direction. And then I believe I also called here that I was running out straight behind the pack just to make sure that all of the group could move out of the way and not get accidentally sniped by a deadly thrust. Because at this level, with Raging especially, it will absolutely one-shot anyone that it hits. And a little bit late, but we got our Houndmaster in as well, just to finish off the pack here. I think, depending on the timing, this is also a mob that you could probably just pull into the boss. But because we're not too tight on time, we just opt to kill it here, give our CDs a little bit more time to recharge, and have a bit of a breather before we go right into boss. And unfortunately, you're not going to be able to really see it because of my perspective, but up Or I'll actually rewind a little bit. Up to the side here, like right about here, if someone with a ranged ability, like I believe in this case it was our mage, goes over there, they're actually able to look up the hill and pull the Stoneborn to be mind controlled by our Venthyr. So as I'm running over here to get the far Venthyr, they're going to be doing the same thing in that corner. So we can start the boss fight with these two Stoneborn, and then once these two expire, we're able to get the third at the back of the room. Definitely not necessary, but if you have a Venthyr in the group, it is a pretty nice chunk of otherwise free damage. And then since we haven't done Sagadon on this boss, our floor real estate is a little bit limited. We have a pad on the left side, we have the lieutenant on the right, so we're going to want to be kind of staying in a pretty clumped up area. So I throw down a marker and just ask the group to try to bait their ranged pools on one side of the boss, just so we're going to be able to reuse a lot of the same area and we don't have to, you know, spread out too much and risk someone accidentally butt pulling either the pat or the lieutenant, because that is not a fun way to wipe on a boss, and no one enjoys that. And also, I myself am trying to stack my pools pretty tightly. You can see the energy for the boss here. I know that it's not going to do its spin here until it's capped out on its energy, so we have plenty of time to just sit in the back, stack our pools, not have to worry about it too much, and then pull them out at the last second, just so people are able to actually make their way around. And also, you see I get a Convoke in here. Always a good opportunity to switch into Owl form and just get some free damage since nothing else is really happening. And we're just going to come back here and stack our pools a little bit more, make sure that we're making best use of space, all the while keeping an eye on the energy of the boss, just so we know when to be pulling him out to a place that's safe for everyone to get all the way around him. So here we drop our last pool, and then we just center him on this puddle, so there's a little bit of room to sneak around him in all directions. Alright, so all in all, like, pretty easy boss. We did lose the mage once, but that was just to a kind of weird misplay. Not really too much revolutionary going on here. Once we get out of the boss, we're going to be invising up to the next boss. Since we got most of our count from this starting area, we don't need anything else. And we should have most of our CDs as well. Like, of course, I have Incarn. We're looking up and we see the Boomy has Frenzy. And we're going to be able to just go ahead and hero right on pull here and hopefully get quite a bit of damage in on the boss. Also nicely, this is the week that the slam got nerfed by 15%, so not that we intend on taking too many slams to the face, but if you're in a group that doesn't have as many dispels as ours does, then it won't punish you nearly as badly to have someone that just soaks it. And as you can see in a moment here, actually, because we have triple dispel, myself, the other Boomy, and the mage, we've coordinated who's getting what dispel, so I'm always going to be dispelling the target just so that whoever gets targeted with it, as you see there, once the boss leaps, they're able to use any sort of displacement or speed up just to make sure that they can get out of the slam. So they're both killing the ads but also not taking the damage from the slam. Definitely not required until you get the hierarchies, and even at this level it's survivable for most people to stay in. But if you're able to avoid the damage, it's really good to do that, so your healer is able to get more DPS in, and there's just less opportunities for people to die. Also, another thing for this boss is these ads aren't going to stop and cast until they've been hit with direct damage, so even though we could hit them with a thrash from, 12 yards away, we're going to wait for them to get nice and clumped in the middle before we hit them with anything, and our group is doing the same, just to make sure that they're as close as possible so we're able to CC them effectively with, roars and chaos novas, just to minimize the number of casts that go off and kill them quickly and efficiently and have them nicely stacked up. And actually, I'm just realizing we haven't used our pot in quite a while, so this boss would have been a good opportunity for that. Especially with the weak where you saw there counting down 5 seconds, we have our Karain proc tracked, our first strike. This is a really good boss for us to get decent damage in, because every single ad set we're gonna have a pretty juicy crit just from the free Karain procs. So definitely a very good opportunity to pot and get some damage in that'll help the rest of the group. And looking here as we have, we have Incarn, but we have 30 seconds on Frenzy, which is really for our group the big CD that matters for a lot of these pulls to put together. We're going to just do Incinerator on its own here before we're pulling anything else in. We do also have meta. I can't remember if our Demon Hunter uses meta here or if they use it on the next pull. But if you have a Demon Hunter in the group, definitely another class it's worth structuring your pulls around. I don't, just because I'm so accustomed to running with Boomy, and this is actually, I think, the first key I'd really run with the Demon Hunter, and it's just kind of weird pulling things around 4 minutes. But definitely, if you regularly run with a Demon Hunter, it's worth figuring out a way to structure your pulls around their meta, because they can do some serious damage with it for sure. Also, you saw me there just switching into Owl form, getting a little bit of damage off. It's not a great idea to sit in Owl form in these against this guy and Cold Heart, but neither of them melee particularly hard. So if you're pretty healthy and your healer has mana and you have like even a bark free, it's not a terrible idea to swap and get some free damage in. And now up here, you're actually going to see a tech that I learned from posting the last video. Someone suggested that we can actually hibernate this Far Gargan, and even though it'll put us in combat going past them, they won't immediately chase, it won't aggro the pack, so it just makes it much safer for assembling this and taking as little damage as possible. Now we've got everything marked and focused and aggroed, and we're just going to pull it back, get a Ring of Frost, and then have this really nicely stacked, and this double pull is extremely safe and precise putting together. So that was a really good suggestion we got from our last video, and the whole reason I'm doing this. Obviously we send Incarn here and we're at no risk of dying. Our Boomy is popping Frenzy, and there we go, there's the meta as well, so this pack should absolutely evaporate in short order. The only thing really of note here is just making sure we're pointed a consistent direction for the Townmaster Cleaves, and also just making sure we get the kicks off on Collect Sins, because those will absolutely ruin our day if anime weapons are allowed to spawn. Can say melee magic damage, and it's incredibly hard at that. So as everything's in raging territory, even though we're a bear, we're not that tanky. Having a whole pack of raging is not something we ever want to be face tanking, so as soon as stuff gets into that territory, we're just going to go to Narnia and let our group use their, their rings, their Ursals, their trees, just to make sure the pack stays off of us. So, while this dungeon this week had a minute added to the timer, it can still be somewhat tight if you wipe or something like that. And it's fairly easy to do the last boss with the slow and the physical damage auras, so you see we just ran right past Cold Heart. We also skipped Sagadon earlier in the run. It's a fairly simple boss, so we've just opted to be skipping those 2 lieutenants. You certainly don't need to, but if your group is comfortable with it, it just saves probably a minute and a half, 2 minutes off the timer, without too much added difficulty. And of course, this boss doesn't really have a whole lot going on, similar to the first one. We're just making sure that every volley cast gets a kick, and every time Anima Fountain goes off, if we want, we're also able to swap into Owl and get some free damage off. Usually that means just getting a Star Surge and Sunfire out. That's kind of the quick and easy way to get some efficient damage out, especially when we have Heart Rolling. But if you wanted, you could even try to cycle in Eclipse and get a couple extra casts out as well. The important thing, just making sure that you're watching your Thrash uptime, because if you let that triple stack Thrash debuff drop, you're losing 6% damage, and then it takes a bit to stack it back up, so definitely want to make sure that if you are swapping for any period of time, you just make sure you come back to refresh that thrash before you let it drop. Bit more of a tip for raid when you're cat weaving more, but sometimes in dungeons it might come up where you have some prolonged period of being able to sit in owl form. Another tip for this boss is you'll notice I'm always tanking on top of the active jar, just so that for our melee, if they ever get targeted with the ghost, they don't have to leave melee and lose uptime to be able to kite it, and also should it ever target us, then we don't have to be suddenly running the boss across the room outside of ground effects like Blizzard or Elysian Decree like you just saw, just so the group, is always consistently able to plan their movement and we can plan ours. Now, we don't have Convoke for the start of this pull. Usually, once I spread my Sunfires, I like doing a Convoke just to proc the free Starfall, because it does quite a bit of work in this room, but we didn't have it on pull. That's fine. We'll just go into Incarn immediately for the ability to spam Thrash, and we're just going to be doing as much damage as possible here to make sure that we kill these adds as fast as possible to make this room easy. Also, since this is explosive, there is the added challenge of explosives are going to be spawning all throughout the room. So as we're running up to this room, we're all calling quadrants. So in that case, like I called closer to where we started. I think it was our mage that was getting front left, and it looked like the Boomy was probably getting front right. And we're just all making sure that no explosives in our zones go off. Otherwise, this room can very quickly lead to a wipe, with explosives spawning all over the place and it being very, very hectic, and people taking all of this unnecessary damage, because already, as you can see here, the summons do rage as well, and they have a fixate, so it's very, very easy for people to have multiple adds fixate them and take quite a bit of unplanned damage, so that combined with an explosive can quite easily kill someone. But now that all of that's out of the way and all that we have to worry about is the Inquisitor, we're kind of chilling, we're just recouping, relaxing a little bit, and getting ready for the final boss. Not a whole lot going on here at this point. And also it gives us an opportunity to recharge CDs. Like here, we have about a minute left on our Frenzy, we have 30 seconds on Hero, so we're really just playing the waiting game here, trying to line up as much as possible for the start of the boss so we can make best use of this upcoming hero. We did send our Incarn, of course, but Incarn doesn't really help us with single target damage that much. It's good. But it's not a huge deal that we're not going to have it. We're going to be saving it for later in the boss fight when we've kind of run out of other tools to deal with the magic debuff, and that'll kind of help us carry through one of the later stages of the fight. So just the important thing here is we have tons of time. We have 5 minutes 50, but we only have 1 B-res, so as long as we don't have multiple people getting hit with these statues, because at this point with the physical debuff, a single statue will kill anyone that it hits. Just make sure everyone dodges really early. Don't try to greet any casts, because with the slower movement speed, it'll be hard to get out of the way if you don't instantly start moving out of them. And that for us, that applies too. It probably won't kill us because we are the tank, of course, but with the added physical damage done, they are quite scary, and that combined with a melee or a tick of the dot could easily global us, so it's something that we also have to be very vigilant for. And as you can see here, this is 5 seconds here left on the dot. We're going to be wanting to watch our health quite closely to make sure that we're not in too much danger. The healer said that they had us covered there, so we didn't use anything and our health didn't move a whole lot. But we're going to be wanting to hold as many of our defensives as possible for those later dots when the healer needs a bit of help, and our health is going to be a concern because that can quite easily kill us. It'll do, upwards of half of our health bar per tick, so it can be quite scary. And here you can see I think most people know this by now, but you're able to soak multiple beams. Before, you were actually able to soak all 4 of them as a tank, which was great because they only did the damage of one, but you could be the only one soaking. Now you can only soak 2 at a time, but it does only do, you know, one channel's worth of damage. So you can see, like, here we're even sitting in boomy form, just getting some damage off until the later stages of the channel where it starts to get a bit dicier. But it's very, very safe for us to always cover 2 of them, just taking the strain off of the rest of your group and making it easy as possible. And here you'll see we're finally going to pop our Incarn. We ended up getting through here pretty easily. We didn't have to use any of our survival instincts. We're sitting on Frenzy, which definitely we could have done a better job of. But in any case, we made it through here safely without any close calls, and that's really, at the end of the day, I think what matters. And so we're just gonna wrap this up. It's fortified, so the boss isn't too scary. And with that, we will consume our free droplets of IO. So that's the run. There are some areas I think I've improved on based off the feedback, namely being more attentive to using CDs. Though particularly with Frenzied Regen, I think there's a lot more room to grow. Also, with keeping Moonfires rolling, it looks better to me, but it's still a bad habit I'll be working on for a bit, of just making sure that they're used over swipe when it makes sense to. And then for my own critique, I actually noticed after the fact that there are too many pulls I roll into without either having Rage Banked, or in some cases even with 0 energy. And in those cases, I need to be saving more for the upcoming pulls towards the end of the previous one, or just swapping out a bear to make sure I have the 25 rage that you gain every time you shapeshift into bear. So that's just one thing I noticed after watching the run a couple times. If you noticed anything though, or if you found this run to be helpful, I'd love if you would let me know in the comments below, to let me know that there's both a reason to do this for more of my runs, and that people are interested in watching it. So in any case, thanks for watching and have a great day.